Certainly. Continuing from where we left off, with the same immersive and enhanced narration, between the maid's toes and then set them on fire. In short, the Count, by reporting that the violence made him happier, ended up inspiring his wife's future crimes. Time wore on. Once in a while, a maid died on the estate. Nobody cared. In the eyes of the elite, peasant girls were inconsequential. Disposable. Moreover, Hungary was in crisis. The king had lost nearly everything in the war, and the Báthory family had loaned a fortune to the crown. This meant that Elizabeth was not merely protected by the law. She was above the law. Untouchable. But being untouchable did not equate to being invisible. The local pastors began to grow suspicious of the increasingly frequent funeral rites. Elizabeth claimed the deaths were due to cholera or natural causes, but the speculations became so scandalous that one of the pastors confronted her, calling her a murderer in front of everyone. She showed no reaction. In 1604, the Count fell ill and passed away. More than ever before, the servants witnessed the Countess grow progressively more violent. Sadistic. At 44 years of age, terrified by the prospect of aging, Elizabeth's vanity coalesced with her cruelty. As one might have foreseen, she became obsessed not merely with torture, but with killing. She did not act alone. She assembled a small squadron of psychopaths, a nurse, a disfigured manservant, and her chief accomplice, Anna Darvolia, the woman rumored to have instructed her in the art of murder. The torture usually began with a trivial mistake. A dropped stitch in her crochet was enough to warrant being pierced with needles. A pilfered coin resulted in a branding iron mark on the skin. Everything happened: beatings, pins under the fingernails, severed fingers. Once, Elizabeth shoved her own hand into a maid's mouth, tearing her face. Cruelty was her art. And the blood libel legend? The one where she slaps a maid, feels the blood on her face, and believes it rejuvenated her. It's a potent, vampiric image, but one that's likely untrue. This is the problem with treating crime purely as entertainment. None of the servants who testified against Elizabeth cited the blood baths. It was a myth created years later, perpetuated by history. The truth, however, is that the servants mentioned that during various torture sessions, there was so much blood spilled that it seemed Elizabeth was washing the floor with it. The blood libel rumor exists because it absolves us from confronting evil in its purest form. It explains her crimes as vanity, a human failing, rather than the lust for power and pain that it truly was. In 1610, Elizabeth's arrogance betrayed her. She could no longer deceive anyone. Her maids were seen in town with bruised faces and burn marks. One of them managed to escape the castle with a knife still lodged in her foot. The king, under pressure, ordered an investigation. Hundreds of people corroborated the Countess's malevolence, recounting the screams of beatings and the bloodstains that spread beyond the castle walls. Initial estimates already pointed to nearly 300 victims. The king, who had been a friend of the late Count, hesitated. However, popular pressure proved overwhelming. He dispatched men to investigate, and upon entering the torture chambers, they bore witness to the carnage in progress. The walls were stained, the floor sticky with blood. The Countess was apprehended within her own dungeon. The family pleaded for her not to be subjected to a public trial. Execution or the guillotine would tarnish the nobility's name. Therefore, they spared her name, but not her life. Instead of a trial, Elizabeth was condemned to life imprisonment, immured within the dungeons of her own castle. The castle that was steeped in the blood of her victims. Despite the court's efforts to expunge her existence, trial transcripts were rediscovered in 1720. To this day, the exact number of her victims remains unknown. Figures range from 250 to 650, making her, by any measure, the most prolific serial killer to have ever lived. She died on August 22, 1614, and the reason her figure has been so heavily sexualized over the centuries is simple: tales of lovers, sadism, and bloodbaths render her monstrosity alluring. These are attempts to sanitize her crimes. But the artwork depicting the Countess as a voluptuous woman, with a blood-splattered décolletage, is not frightening. What is frightening is her 1585 portrait. It is chilling to see the gaze of the woman who committed these atrocities. The Blood Countess is the prime example of what I mentioned at the outset. The mythologization and denial of the female serial killer is precisely what enables them to kill for years without raising a single suspicion. If this somber journey through history has captivated you, please leave a like so this analysis can reach and help more people understand the complexity behind the myths. And now, I want to hear your theory. Comment below, do you believe in the legend of the Blood Countess or a political conspiracy? Your perspective enriches the discussion.